Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. I hope everyone can hear me well. So my name is Julia, and let me go here. So I'm going to talk about the future of work and employment, both during the period of the lockdown as well as for the period following the lockdown during the COVID-19 crisis. I work in the Work and Employment Relations Division, and what I tried to do here is to make a collection of a number of things that have to do with work and employment during this period, during this crisis. So this is not necessarily my work, but these are things that both my colleagues and myself have been working on. Right, this is an introductory slide for Leeds University, and this is also the lockdown seminars that will follow the following days. So I would like to concentrate on what were and what will be the expectations of work and employment both post-lockdown period and during the COVID-19 crisis. When I started putting together these slides, when I started putting together this presentation, I had the use of technology first. Then I would talk about the need for labor market regulation or labor market regulation during this period in general. And finally, the need for accurate data and data collection. However, as I was working on the presentation, I realized that it is important to start with labor market regulation and explain a couple of things that have happened recently with regard to work and employment policy, and then talk about technology and limitations of data that we currently have in order to have a better picture of what is going on with regard to work and employment. Fortunately or unfortunately, work and employment has been in the core of this crisis, and the reason is that we are actually facing a situation where we haven't seen or we haven't experienced in the past. So essentially, one of the fields, one of the areas in our lives that has been particularly affected was our work patterns and our employment. So I will start with some facts saying that at this time, 47% of the workforce are working from home. 1/5 of the workforce is currently furloughed. Most of us have heard about the job retention scheme, which is the furlough in essence, which covers people who are furloughed. This covers 6.3 million jobs, and it has been introduced in an effort to reduce mass unemployment and to reduce redundancies, because otherwise redundancies would be the other option. Yet there are a number of problems which have not been covered yet. The job retention scheme does not address the unemployed or employees who are working in different working patterns, such as part-time. 2 million people had to apply for unemployment benefits, for those of them who were unemployed. And the key on March 19th, the key workers list was published, highlighting the most important issues during the COVID-19 crisis. The reason that the job retention scheme and other related policy has been introduced was in order both to, as I was saying, both to tackle mass unemployment and redundancies, but also in order to phase out the period following the lockdown, following the lockdown during the COVID-19 crisis. In order to facilitate, in order to avoid redundancies. Yet, a number of issues remain unsolved and remain open. Both employers and employees have been asking to what extent furlough or the post-furlough period will actually cover part-timers and employees who are working on different working patterns, such as short work time, something that was introduced and something that has been discussed lately, which is a new working pattern. Also, a number of questions remain open, and I know that a number of employees are particularly interested and particularly concerned, such as following the furlough. Are certain jobs going to disappear, or will jobs be different? And who are going to be these people who are going to go back to their work? And does this mean that they're going to be back in business as usual and as normal? Or is it going to be a different way of work, a different way of working patterns, or a different type of organization? There are a number of implications, and I think this is what we are mainly interested in my division and in the area that I'm working on work and employment. One issue was that one implication was that the lockdown period meant for some people, it meant that the problem for some people was essentially no work during the lockdown, or at least following the lockdown period. And whether these employees can actually, these individuals can survive the loss of work as the economy contracts. Whereas for others, this meant an increase in work, especially when combining full-time work from home, childcare, and other issues, elder care, for example, or no help from no help from nannies or other people who have been helping with elder and child care. So essentially, this meant heavier and more and busier days, essentially. Implications regarding space, time, and expectations, both in lockdown, during the lockdown period and the post-lockdown, are issues that are being still discussed. Space is one of the issues discussed. I had a friend who was saying that her company has been doing tremendously well lately. Since my friend is working in technology, and they have been doing tremendously well. They had in the last quarter 40% increase in profits, and yet, with no reason at all, the company decided to close down all offices, including the London office. It's an international company, and they told them that from now on they will need to work always from home, which for her, space-wise, time-wise, and expectation-wise is and will be a nightmare, as I was saying, because this creates different expectations with regard to the space that you have at your home, the time that you have to allocate at your work, when does it start, when does it end. And of course, it means that some people have been, although employees have been always, generally speaking, fond of work from home, a permanent work from home, for many years, we are all not sure from the discussions that we had whether this is the best option that can actually take place. The other problem was with regards to the other debate, which is currently going on, are implications with regards to key workers list. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, the key workers list does not address reality. The key workers list at that point suggest a mismatch between value and skill. So for many key workers, the value of their work is not necessarily reflected in their salary, employment rights, and social protection. So I would just say that the key workers list includes 7.1 million key workers. 60% of them are women, and specifically 77% of them are women at high-risk jobs. Although we cannot deny that the key workers list definitely includes some high-skilled occupations, such as doctor, for example, the majority of key workers list does include low skill, and unskilled work, which suggests a disproportionate risk-reward balance. So essentially, it means that those people are doing very important jobs and they're paid very, very little. The key workers list also suggests that maybe it is time for us to reconsider how we perform our work and what jobs we are doing. This includes ourselves as well, academics. As essentially it suggests, it implies that the value of work is in different areas, not necessarily in what so far has been considered important. So essentially, it is very important to think a bit about how we have been working and what we have been working on the past years. How was our working model? Definitely frontline intensity and pressure, as well as health, mental health, and physical health and safety implications has also been a core point of discussion. I would also like to mention that several factors, including the Brexit, intensify the problematic case of workforce shortages or of workforce adjustments at the moment, especially in specific sectors where migrants have been working for the past years, such as care, agriculture, logistics, deliveries, where at the moment there is a shortage, more people are needed. This has been usually covered by immigrants and migrants, and most probably with the Brexit on the 12th of December, this is going to be another factor to factor in. So essentially, two of the things that I would like to ask people to think about, and I'm thinking about as well, is it time to reconsider, as I was saying, what we are working on, how we are working, and whether the working model at the moment is as viable currently as it is in the future. And if we're thinking of different workforce adjustments, are there going to be different workforce adjustments taking place following the lockdown, and what type of adjustments are these going to be? One of the factors that have been very prominent and have been also very important, very significant lately, especially with regards to the COVID-19 crisis, has been technology. On one hand, the COVID-19 crisis unveiled a number of issues. On one hand, previous concerns of human labor being replaced by technology was not confirmed, and this was a very positive scenario. We realized that human labor cannot be replaced, specifically in some sectors. There were all these pessimistic scenarios talking about, for example, robots taking over care of elder people, or, for example, drones being extensively used in delivery and logistics sector. Thus, then the COVID-19 crisis came and made us change completely our perceptions, saying, identifying that care means human beings, delivery means human beings. So essentially, it gave a more different perspective to what we already had in mind, that in many cases human beings are irreplaceable. On the other hand, though, a number of us, including academics, we wouldn't be able to work unless we use technology. We wouldn't be able to talk, all of us who talk today here, unless we had platforms or different technological means so that we can keep up our work as we are currently doing. So, when considering technology and work and employment, one of the things that is coming to our minds is, so who can work anywhere and who cannot, and what does this entail? Which jobs are more viable, and which jobs cannot depend heavily on technology, therefore are in higher hazard, or higher danger of being replaced. And in the end of the day, the other thing that we are trying to understand right now is, does the current crisis expedite technology adoption, and where does this technology, how much technology can actually help our work and our employment prospects. I'm also discussing, I would also like to devote just a couple of minutes in data limitations, because this is very important, especially with, when we are talking about workforce adjustments, as at the moment, one of the problems, not just for academics, but also for policy, for people working on policy, it's extremely difficult to trace and identify what is going on with regard to companies, organizations, employers and employees due to lack of appropriate data. This creates a lot of problems with regard to decision making. The Work and Employment Relations Survey of 2011 was one of the most important data sets where both policymakers, employers and employees were able to locate, to identify data in order to see how the recession of 2008-2009 affected work and employment and the economy in total. Unfortunately, this data set has now been suspended, most probably cancelled due to financial reasons. Most probably, it will not go on this period. So at the moment, there is a gap, both for employers and from employees. So we don't have enough data in order to understand, neither from employees nor from employers, in order to cross-check and in order to see what is the current situation with regard to companies and with regard to employees during the COVID crisis. Work Employment Relations Survey was collecting data both from companies. They had managers or a managers questionnaire which they were distributing, and they were also distributing another questionnaire to employees. So there was both a matching of the two data sets, but there was also very concrete information both from the employer and the employee perspective. And this actually shed light and provided us with a lot of information in the past crisis. This is not going on right now. Employee data is more diverse. There are more options. There is the labor force survey. There is the Understanding Society, which is also collecting data from individuals and households, not though employees specifically, during the COVID-19 periods. The Office of National Statistics definitely regularly updates, yet there is no wide coverage. The problem, though, at the moment is that this is both with regard to financial and employment issues during and following the COVID-19 crisis. This also creates limited data for decision making for government. So, for example, the example I gave with my friend, whose company is doing great, but still they're closing down offices, or they're letting people go, which means redundancies. It's very difficult to be traced, and it's very difficult to identify what is going on currently and what will go on in the next 6 months. And that's for me. Thanks so much, and I would love to hear your questions. I'm very, very, very eager to hear questions and to have a discussion.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Some really interesting points, and particularly some of the sort of stats in there are really stark. I'd love to pick up a bit on, when you were saying about how human beings can't be replaced, and that's sort of become even more evident. So going forward, well, I suppose there's a question around sort of now in terms of where we've been asked to use technology. Should employers be looking at trying to sort of really expedite the use of technology within their offering to their employees? And then going forward, do you think that they will become areas where human beings will be tried to be replaced, or is there always going to be kind of a set of skills that are just never going to be able to be replaced by technology?
Okay, this is a very interesting question, because as I was explaining, we had we were also wrong in our expectations as well. So I'm not going to lie, but till January, we have been literally working on a number of jobs that are going to be replaced by technology. So one of these jobs were the care sectors, jobs that had to do with people with care, with social care workers, or for example, delivery. So I mentioned this particular two examples because, for instance, they were one of the jobs that academics and policymakers were 100% sure that they are going to be replaced by drones or robots. For example, a robot could take the temperature of an older person, or take care of them. You know, make sure there are a lot of movies as well, for example, that were mentioning, were talking, were about this thing, how, for example, robots can take care of elder people. However, we were very happy to be wrong, because essentially we realized that if there is a critical situation, if people are seriously ill, or if people really need help, the drone cannot send or cannot deliver food. Or, for example, when people are seriously ill, no one can actually, a robot cannot actually understand the extent of the illness, or can understand what they need. So we are really happy to say that we don't feel that jobs are going to be replaced by technology as much as we believe. Certainly, people.
I'm really sorry to interrupt your thought process there. Just we've had a few people suggesting they can't hear very well. Could you maybe shift the microphone bit so that they can?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Is it
wonderful.
better?
Oh, that's
great.
perfect.
So sorry for that. Terribly sorry
that's
for that.
much better. Maybe if you could just repeat that last little bit.
Yeah, no. Actually, it was the optimistic scenario, the last sentence. And again, I was saying that we feel that the COVID-19 crisis gave a very, very good idea of technology cannot replace human work to such an extent. So essentially, human beings will always be needed more than we thought, and fortunately more than we feared. So it's I would say that this is an optimistic scenario, resulting from the COVID-19 crisis. Still, though, it's very important. As I was saying, that a number of, regarding the first question, a number of employers will take advantage at the moment the use of technology. So, for example, as in the example that I was giving, there are organizations, there are companies who saw that actually the work from home model works well. So we are expected, we do believe that we will see organizations pushing people to work from home more than previously, especially in London. And I'm saying especially in London because prices of properties are very high, and it's a very good opportunity for companies to cut costs. So we feel that this is going to be number one pattern to see lately, which is already becoming already being discussed within companies.
Oh, well, that's interesting, because that picks up on a question that Emily has asked in the chat around, do you think there are any particular trends geographically that you can see? So obviously, is it a case of it's more about city versus country sort of living, or, she suggested, is there a north-south difference?
I cannot say definitely yes or no, because as I was saying, we don't have enough data at the moment. So essentially, this is a huge problem. But from discussions that we have with anecdotal discussions that we were having with people who have been working in London, they are starting having information from their companies that in order to eliminate costs, especially as I was saying in London, they are trying to make them feel that work from home is not something that is only happening now, that it will be implemented for quite some time. And in cases such as technology, the technology sector, where this is possible, I think that there might be, I don't want to say intentions, but there may be thoughts of creating more companies with employees who do not have a basis, but they're working from home.
Ah, right. So one of the questions, it's funny you should say it. So one of the questions that was put up as part of the registration questions was around exactly that. So the question was more of, can you see, for where it's worked, can you see there being a flip in employers actually making sort of working from home the default and only providing office space or sort of social spaces for their workers, you know, or as a kind of, you know, backup, rather than as we sort of have been working as with it the other way around?
I think yes. There have been companies the past couple of years, in order not to have a huge office, there have been companies which actually had only what they were calling hot desking. So employees didn't have an actual place where they were sitting, let's say, every day, but they had hot desks. So essentially, this was particularly in technology, where people were working in different areas. They were having meetings, and then they were going back to hot desk area where they could work quietly, let's say, for some time during the day. So these companies have now went to the next level. These companies realize that working from home is not that bad, and it can actually serve as a hot desk. So I don't. I guess that companies who were already working in a hot desk pattern, now they can certainly work from home and have employees, you know, using a number of different platforms in order to coordinate. So yes, I definitely feel that some companies will try to do this in the near future.
So do you think hot desking will continue because of the sort of, in light of the dangers of, you know, we've been told about sort of that sharing of space shouldn't really happen anymore? Is that going to affect this, or do you see this being more of a longer term solution for companies?
I think that one of the reasons people are very cautious of going back to their workplaces at the moment is not only the workplace itself, but it is also means of transportation. So this is a very, very good excuse for employees and employers to, you know, say that, you know, working from home is safer in that aspect. So I do believe that it will work well and as a compromise for the next 6 months or so. But my main concern is when this is going to become a pattern from 6 months or a year onwards. So essentially, if companies, let's say, urge employees to work from home, I'm not 100% sure in a year's time how viable this model actually is, as I was saying. And I think it has to do with a number of reasons. First of all, work is a socialization place, first of all, so people need to have this kind of socialization. They need to go out of the house at least some days per week so that they can see other people, they can discuss. I also have serious health-related concerns. If, for example, work from home will become a pattern in the sense that we all don't have the right equipment to work from home, also being in front of a computer for many hours, I suppose a lot of people are experiencing it right now, creates dizziness, headaches, we feel more tired in a shorter period of time. So it definitely has some effect on our health. So there are a number of reasons that I feel that this cannot be viable in 1 or 2 years' time. And my concern is that a number of companies have are feeling that for them it works, but I'm not 100% sure that it will work for the employees equally in 1 or 2 years' time as well.
Because presumably employers have a responsibility towards their employees to give them a safe working environment. Much more difficult to achieve that if everyone's working at home.
Exactly.
And people are putting up with it for the minute because we have to. So, question from Bev in the chat here says, do we think RPA will be seen as a silver bullet? Soft bots performing bad processes won't help. So presumably interested in kind of what technology will be used for and whether or not it should be seen in that way.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question, the first part.
So he's written, do we think RPA will be seen as a silver bullet, like an easy solution, a one-tick solution?
PA, as in, sorry?
Well, I actually happen to know Bev's got a working microphone, so perhaps, Bev, you could unmute for a second and ask your question, as I'm obviously not translating it very well.
Yeah, no, RPA is robotic process automation, and I'm worried that people will see RPA, which is going to be a massive boom thing anyway, in the next couple of years. But people will think they can just get the machines to do lots of processes. But if they do it without doing proper systems analysis first, all you end up with is softbots doing ineffective work just faster.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, I was looking at another question as well. Yes, as I was saying, I am concerned. I share the same concerns. Both with regards to what jobs are going to be left for us and what jobs are going to be actually taken up by robots, or what automation is going to what automation is going to have to do. But I feel, and I'm relatively optimistic, that given the current crisis, we will need to rethink of what the expectations were for us, to be perfectly honest, and what expectations from technology, robotics, automation, and all different digitalization are with regard to what we can do, humans can do, and what technology can do for us. I'm not 100% sure, though, if I respond to your question very well. Bev?
Yeah, I think so. The thing is that I've just been doing a lot of work with SEMA, and they see RPA as being one of the big boom things in the next few years. But the problem is that if you just computerize a bad system, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
And
Clearly.
And I think what I'm worried about is that people will look at the labor situation and rush to get RPA maximized without doing proper analysis first, so that all they do is just process something that's bad in the first place. So all that happens is that the computer does it quicker, but it's still the wrong thing to do.
I totally agree with you. And sometimes you have to, the computer does it quick. I'm not even 100% sure that the computer does it quicker, in the sense that you have to code again and again and again and again, and then essentially to repeat same processes again and again, and then, do the same process so many times that eventually it might work, but a lot of time has been actually lost.
No, I think we agree.
So that's really interesting. Again, ties to a question that came in previously around, so on the customer side of things, if this is where sort of technology is being used, as customers, are we to expect less sort of face-to-face service? Are we going to see a change in terms of how, you know, reception, help desks and things like that work?
I think that the most important thing that we're expected to do is, I suppose, to have a little bit of more patience. Because if I do, you know, we have all realized that lately queues are longer, less employees are working in retail, in supermarkets, etc. So we definitely need to be more patient as customers with regard to what employees can do, given their numbers at the moment. The other thing, though, that I would like to say is that this raises another question with regard to how much online retail, online delivery in supermarkets has worked so far and can work, because essentially we realized also, even though people depended heavily on online deliveries, or if they depended heavily on online retail, things were not that smooth, and things were not that easy, or as easy as we thought that they would be. So essentially, I feel as both customers and as employees ourselves, I would say that there should be an expectation for more time in things. And that has to do with work that we are doing, because, for example, someone cannot be as productive, or someone cannot be as quick as they used to be before that, including myself. For example, I cannot deliver as much as I could, given that I have a little one in my house. Similarly, people who are in retail, or people who are in supermarkets, given that there are fewer numbers of employees, we have to be more patient. We have to expect that this is so much they can do, and this is so much that can be done.
Yeah, I can share that. I've got a couple of kids who are definitely sucking up a lot of time that I never thought I'd have to factor into the working day. I dare say that lots of people are juggling lots of different things as well. So on that, it kind of picks up a couple of questions from Emily that have come up on the chat here around, you know, do you think these changes, or the projected changes, might have an effect in terms of gender equality? And goes on to then say, and what about you know, impact on social inequality as well? So thinking about the way in which these roles might be slightly different, how do you think they're going to be affected?
Okay, there are definitely suggestions so far from data that there is gender inequality. It's true that I have two articles from the Financial Times there, and another one, a blog written by Deborah Crawford, which I have included in my reference list, where it clearly says that it is mainly women and younger employees who have been hit the most by the COVID-19 crisis. Women, because they also, even if they're not hit in specific occupations at the moment, they're expected to have more difficulties when in one household, two independent members live and they have to go back to work. It is expected that women are going to be those ones which will most probably need to stay home in order for the rest of the household members to catch up. So we are expecting that something like that would happen. So essentially this means definitely lower female employment, which definitely has social implications. This is one of our most serious concerns, to be perfectly honest. Although at the moment we do realize that households may have different compositions. So, for example, it may be the man who is furloughed and women still working. So the balance, to a certain extent, may exist within the households. We do realize that when it has to do with occupations, so for example, 77% of women are at high risk, for example, at high risk occupations, or 60% of women are actually in low pay, low skill key workers positions, this necessarily shows already that there is a gender inequality, and most probably age inequality as well, because we see the same numbers for young people as well, young employees who have been just entering the labor market. So essentially we see this pattern first comer, first leaver, in the sense that those have been most seriously affected at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. So for those who are coming up for graduation, perhaps, or school leaver over this summer, it's not looking too rosy at the moment. So for the employers or team leaders who are listening to you at the minute, what are the kinds of tips or things that you've seen, evidence that they can do to sort of help maybe balance some of this, if there is anything?
Right. The first thing I would say, and I know it may sound weird, is don't let your core employees, don't let people go because of the current situation. They have been trained, they know your company, they know your organization. I'm sure that they want their job more than you can imagine, and more than more than an employer can actually say. I do realize that it may be difficult, and sometimes people are working antisocial hours or are working odd hours. But from what I know is that people are doing, the majority of employees are doing their best in order to accommodate work needs. What I would suggest is at this stage, flexibility. Things are going to be much better when schools open, and they're supposed to open from, in a limited number, of course, from June 1st. But employees, like employers, are also very, very, very eager to go back to work in more normal patterns. So I would say again that try to use the current workforce as much as you can in the pattern that is now being offered. And please, please, please be patient. People are actually doing their best, and they're really doing their best.
Oh, thanks. I think that's a really heartfelt message.
I know it is.
So looking at sort of the data aspect that you mentioned, there's obviously a lack of data around here, but you also said there's some references and things for people to maybe look at. For those people who are really interested in kind of following this conversation, where should people be looking for good data, and where should they be getting their sources of information from?
That's a very good question. So the situation with regard to employers and what is going on is a little bit dark, unfortunately, because, as I was saying, work and employment relations, which was the main survey for employers, is not going to go on. So I don't know where we're going to be able to find information with regards to organizations coming from employers themselves. With regard to employees, things are a little bit easier. For a regular, I would say every day, or not every day, a couple of weeks information, I would suggest the Office of National Statistics. So if you type, for example, unemployment, ONS, Office of National Statistics, or for example, workforce working from home, or anything that has to do with employment, ONS is pretty fast, generally speaking. Not very concrete at the moment, not very accurate at the moment, but they're pretty fast. The labor force survey is the best source of information purely for work and employment relations aspects, but not necessarily for things that have to do, for example, with care, how many people were having additional, for example, responsibilities such as care responsibilities or other things apart from work and employment. For this kind of this type of issues, as well as health related, the COVID-19 Understanding Society will be released very soon, end of May, and this is a very good data set for people to advise if they want to have a better understanding of how the situation is, not only with regard to work and employment, but also with regard to health-related matters and caring, or also things that had to do with how many people had contracted the virus, how many people were, for example, what people were doing with regard to exercise. Generally, it's a more life / work and employment data set rather than work-related, specifically like labor force survey.
Great, thank you. And you said that there's going to be some links in the reference slides there that we can send out as well. So for those of you who haven't quite scribbled it down fast enough, you should be able to find them. So we're going to have to think about wrapping up in a minute, but there are just there's a question here in chat which I think all of us are quite interested in from the university side of things about what do you think the future of lecturers or university teachers is going to be with regards to learning online? And I guess this is more so because as technology comes in and people are having to kind of upskill through their working lives, it's not just about being a student as a young person anymore, but sort of learning throughout their life. How is teaching going to be delivered? Should universities, or can universities compete with YouTube and other sort of free online learning platforms?
I also saw a question here from someone asking, will the university degree be required, or is a university degree offering has any value at the moment, or something like that? I do want to believe that the crisis is going to be something temporary. By saying something temporary, I don't mean 6 months and then we're going to go back to teaching or universities or where we were at the universities, but I mean a year and a half. So things will go back, may go back to normal in a 2-year period of time. What I would suggest to people is, if someone was thinking of taking a degree, if someone was thinking of attending the university, it's a good time to do so. A number of universities have also become a little bit very good universities, including Leeds, LSE, Imperial, etc., have become more lenient in their application process. So I think it's a good opportunity for people to acquire more qualifications and to get to acquire better skills. What I would like, though, to say is that I do feel that teaching is going to be a little bit different this year, at least for a reasonable amount of time. First term, maybe first and a little bit of the second term. Teaching may not be as interactive as it was. I also think that ourselves as well, the lecturers, don't find it particularly enjoyable. I mean, our job was always to interact, to discuss, to debate face to face. So we're trying to adjust in this situation. We're trying to adjust our teaching also, and most importantly, the quality of our teaching in the to the given circumstances. So I believe that for a limited period of time, 6 months, it's a very, very good compromise. But I do feel that both lecturers and both students will want to go back to the previous interactive pattern we are used to have in the university, because essentially the universities are places of this, and they cannot necessarily replace human interaction.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that is the case. And thank you to everyone in chat. So before I let Ioulia summarize things and sort of finish the session for today, I just want to say thank you all, particularly for those of you who have been busy sharing resources and putting suggestions in the chat window, because they're really good. They will be recorded as well and go out. So for those of you who've not managed to get through them, you can go back through the video and you'll be able to get to those resources there. So do you want to have a couple of minutes of summarising before we have to say goodbye to everyone?
Yes, I think what I would like to say is, we should all be a little bit more patient including employers. And it is a good opportunity this year for especially younger employees, people who are trying to enter the labor market, to acquire more qualifications. I would certainly take this year as an opportunity to do something more, if possible, of course.
Great. Lovely positive message to end on there, in amongst everything else we're doing. So on behalf of everyone here, I want to say thank you ever so much for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon. Thank you all very much for those of you who've joined us. I hope you've had an interesting session, and we'll hope to see you again in more of our webinars as we go through this week and then into the next few weeks. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, honestly, and I really hope we will have the chance to meet face-to-face at some point.
Yeah, so for those of you who registered on Eventbrite, the slides will go out to the email addresses, and then recordings of this webinar will be available through the University Business School website in the next few days.